All right, so we're started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to 1000 Gurus, hosted by me, Jerry Yonocruz. It is my mission to interview some of the most interesting and inspiring people out there, hear their stories, and try to distill some of their life lessons and insights so that hopefully you, the audience, can learn from it, apply in your own life, and help you achieve whatever goals you have, whether that be success, happiness, love, etc. So with me, I have my good friend, Rani Bungay. I will read his. Yay! Woo, he deserves it.
Oh,
Yeah, so I'll read his bio, his intro. So Ronnie is a managing partner of Oni Ventures. He's a serial entrepreneur who jumped from accounting to underwriting and has made his way to private wealth management and is now running businesses, some of which include a mass company, real estate investments and management, and auto management. And he's now getting into software engineering in New York fairly soon. He also deadlifts 750 pounds dry, likes long walks in the park in the dark by himself. He's a food enthusiast, but only when other people invite him out. And he's just there for the vibes. And he always goes full out, never marks. So for dancers, if you know, you know. Um, and he loves when you tell jokes about him to strangers, apparently. So it's one of his
great.
kinks.
I need to hire the chat GPT that you used
Yeah,
to.
yeah, it's very good. Yeah. I wanted to start off with a video that we both created together.
Oh,
A little background on this. We had this really stupid idea to make a dance video based on One Direction that we both liked, and it was during finals week in like the study lounges area. While everyone else was studying for finals, I was a senior. Ronnie, you were like third year, second
I
year?
was a sophomore year, and I
Sophomore,
also
yeah.
had an ankle sprain. If you
And
remember
ankle sprain. Yeah, yeah, that's
that.
right. And so instead of studying, what we did was we made this stupid video and it took must have edited I edited like 16 hours straight just editing it. But yeah, here's a little snippet of
Oh,
it. Oh yeah.
ka
Uh,
ka ka.
you're
You're insecure.
insecure.
Ta
Don't,
ta
don't, don't,
ta.
don't.
No, no,
Four.
four.
Heads
You need to walk
walk through
through
the
the door.
door. Don't need
When you wake up,
makeup. Brr, 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 to cover up.
being
The way that you are
is
is enough.
enough.
I love
Yeah,
the
that's
literal
validation.
choreography. Everyone else in the room can see.
I couldn't spin. My ankle was broken.
Everyone, oh yeah,
No
like yeah, and then it gets worse from
one
here.
world like
Nobody
nobody else.
else
Toot, toot, toot,
could.
toot,
Yeah,
toot, toot, toot.
definitely went viral. No, it didn't. Okay, okay, that's enough. That's enough. Thanks, Solomon.
Yes.
So yeah. So anyways, so
Hey, in my defense, it would have gone viral today.
yeah, it definitely would have gone TikTok viral.
Yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, we know each other from dance, right? We were on the same dance team. We both went to UCI. Um, and I don't know if I wanted to go into the story, but it was like, I don't know. I think from the very beginning, I feel like we vibed really well. Like my first impression of Ronnie, we were in a circle for our dance team. And I remember I was just interrupting and being stupid and like telling dumb jokes. And then I had just met Ronnie and I remember he was laughing at all my jokes. He was just sitting next to me. I was like, oh, this guy's kind of cool. Like he thinks I'm funny. So I was like, okay, I think we're gonna be friends for a while.
I just wanted to be accepted and
Or
part
he
of the
just wants to be accepted.
tribe.
Yeah.
No,
That's it.
I
And
thought,
he's Filipino. So I was like, okay, maybe we have something in common.
there you go. No, I genuinely thought your jokes were really funny, and that's why it
Validation.
was actually kind of funny that no one else was laughing also. So this
Yeah, that's why I was like,
made
hey.
it even more funny for me. Yeah.
So yeah, so that's how we know each other. And yeah, so I think a lot of what we're gonna talk about is entrepreneurship. You've had your own entrepreneurial journey,
Yep.
which I've been following since then, and I really respect your journey, and I think it could be very helpful for the audience to hear from. Um, and so I know when we talked, so you were born in the Philippines, right? And you
Yes.
came over when you were 9. And then I think the expected career path was, to be risk averse and like most Asian households, like get a job, get a good job, make money, be secure and whatnot. And then you found yourself into entrepreneurship. So I don't know if you want to walk us through like how you got from there to here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can't agree anymore. I think being a first gen here, there's this sort of expectation for you to be able to, you know, carry yourself with the opportunities that we were given here.
Mm,
I went to UCI. Once I graduated, I immediately moved away from my family and went all the way to San Francisco and
mm,
started my accounting job,
mm,
which my parents wanted for me. Uh, I found out very quickly that that was not the path that I wanted to take. I had a very long conversation with my parents afterwards, saying like, "Hey, I need to find my own path." Ended up starting in like specifically finance and underwriting. Moved into private wealth management, and that really opened the doors for me to like realize that the people that make more or make the most out of themselves and the true understanding of what it means to take in the opportunity is to go through your entrepreneurship journey.
Mm,
And so from there, I, been in several cities and states and moved away. And yeah, now I'm going to be going to New York afterwards.
nice. Yeah, that's exciting. I know, like I mentioned in the bio, that you're planning on going into like software development, software engineering. So like, what was some of the major influences that kind of led you to this journey? I mean, like, was it just, or like, what deterred you from that current trajectory that you had going out of college? Like, what were those factors? Because I think, from the perspective of maybe the audience or maybe like people watching this, it's like, okay, I'm either in a career or I'm in college or I'm in high school and like I don't know what to do, like where to go, what career path to choose. So then how did you go from that into like this?
Yeah, I think for me, in terms of the transition first into going into an entrepreneurship journey, I think it really just matters on the environment that you're in.
Mm,
I moved again, like my family's like based in Southern California, and I personally moved to San Francisco, where at least during that time there was a lot of serial entrepreneurs like myself, but they were all getting into tech, and a lot of things were blowing up. Right, this was in the peak season of when like Airbnb started making its way, the Ubers, the Lyfts, and just innovation in general was skyrocketing during that time. And I knew that I wanted to feel some sort of success from there, but I also knew that at least my path then was specifically in finance. So I looked for, like that's when I really took a look hard at myself and see what my journey is there. That led me to going into private wealth, where now I was managing, multi-million dollar clients, and saw where their investments were and how they protected their investments and which type of opportunities they were investing on, essentially.
mm,
That's when I realized I need to be on that side as opposed to just the person managing it. And
mm.
that's how I came to be.
Right. So then it seems like the goal was always to get to that point where you could like make more money, right? And so
Yes.
it's like, to make more money, right?
Yes.
So what is that? Trying to find the question. Like, okay, obviously people want to make more money, right? But
Yep.
like, so what does it mean for you to make more money? Like, everyone wants more money, but then what makes you decide that, okay, I see that these people who are rich or financially well off, they're doing this, so I should go in that directions, right?
Yep.
So like, I guess what makes you pursue what you do now, like that pursuit of money?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was really just taking good look hard at myself. Like I was putting in, like when you're in private wealth management and you're managing other people's money, you're still putting in 60, 70 hour weeks. At the same time, those 60 to 70 hour weeks that you're putting in is essentially for someone else that's above you that's also gaining all those interests. I took a good hearted look at myself. I knew exactly what I was making. I also knew that it wasn't necessarily like enough. And I knew that if I had the persistence that I wanted to do, I was able to put in those 70 hours, 60, 70 hours that I would have done for somebody else anyways, and invest in myself and reap the rewards from there. I
Mm,
think that's what it came down to.
that makes sense. So then, so I get that the goal was to make money or make more money, but why?
Yeah, I think fundamentally, I think being in an Asian culture, like I wanted to, I have this ideal lifestyle of like not only being able to like work for myself, but also um, take care of my family.
Mhm.
Take care of my not only my current family, but my future family as well. I think that the grind that like at a very young age where you're unencumbered, you're very risk averse, and all of those things just naturally matched up to me wanting to be able to take a risk on myself. Um, in that, so that I can, again, hope for the best and really, um, give back to the family that I currently have, as well as it's like in the future with my own family as well.
Okay. So it's like that financial freedom, providing for your family, having like the ability to do what you want, things like that, and then to provide for them. So then how did you like with the businesses and the career that trajectory that you're going on now, like how did that come into your life? Like you Google search like how to make more money, or like Instagram video, you can be a millionaire. Like how did those ideas of what you do now, like or when you do wealth management, real estate, the your companies and all this stuff, like how did that enter your like your vision?
Absolutely. I think, have you ever heard of the red card theory that a lot of people are recently talking about?
Red car theory?
Yes.
Is it a theory of cars that are red? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
So the premise of it
Yeah.
is that when someone asks you throughout the day, like, "Oh, how many red cars have you seen when you're driving on the road?" You're like, "Oh, I don't know, probably like 5." Like
Mhm.
whatever. You won't really know. But if
Mhm.
someone told you, "Hey, I'm going to give you $1 for every single red car that you see for the day," at the end of the day, you're going to know exactly and keep count
Mm.
of which one of how many cars there are because you want to make that money.
'Cause it's incentivized?
You're incentivized.
Yeah.
So for me, if my incentivize is, hey, I want to pursue this naturally, like when you're looking at naturally you come up across and like look to the right place and put yourself in an environment where you're going to be able to see those things. And I think for me specifically, I was surrounded by people that were also driven for financial freedom for themselves. And that's when, collectively, when you put multiple brains together, you get to then find out like from sources as well.
Okay, so you're saying that you had this idea of, well, okay, so the goal was to like, make more money and have a business or like work for yourself.
Yep.
So then you put yourself around those people, and then being around those people exposed you to those like industries, those businesses and whatnot.
Industries and the opportunities that
Opportunities.
come from there as well.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So I guess going off of that, then if you're talking about like, so it led it your it, you got to that path because you had a goal, and then
Yep.
you're like, okay, let me figure out how to get there, and then you surround yourself with the right people. Do you have any other like takeaways or like strategies or mindsets or like best practices that helped you get to there? Because I'm sure there are other people who want to be successful, they want to make money, right? And that's also your journey. So what advice would you give in that sense?
I think w- so. First off, is again, it's really just putting yourself in this mindset that that's where you want to be. When that happens, I truly think that there's going to be opportunities, whether or not you never thought of it as an opportunity come before, is it's going to pop up. When you think about, like for example, innovation, and when you're continuously thinking like, oh, I want to create a new idea, right? Like everything can come up from there. Like for example, like this mic, like, oh, like I want something to create something new. You're essentially tweaking your mindset to being like, oh, maybe that there's a way to for this to go higher or like lower. And then that sparks the idea from there on questioning like, oh, how can make money out of this, right?
Mm,
Fortunately for me, when I was in like private wealth, I think naturally because of my business, my job industry, it forced me to find investments
mm,
for our clients that are all entrepreneurs that are doing essentially
mm,
same thing something as me. They found something and they're looking to get funded, and then that's when you realize like, wow, there's just really this new opportunity or door to be able to go from there, right? And so yeah, I think that's my advice. I would say in terms of people that are like looking into getting into entrepreneurship is I honestly part of it is like read, but also like expand your horizons.
mm.
The more you're able to expand your horizons, the more opportunities you're just gonna set in play, and the better the mindset you have, the more persistent you're going to be.
Okay. So it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, it's you keeping your eyes open for the opportunities that are around there, right? Because if you have a goal, then naturally you're going to be exposed to those different opportunities. And in your case, you were exposed to like these entrepreneurs who are trying to get funded. But more importantly than that, it's that you were open to it and you were looking for those opportunities, and that's how they come to you.
Exactly.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, so like I guess on the topic of entrepreneurship, we have like a few topics we discussed beforehand, but it's like there's a few questions, and I guess we can tackle this however you want. But the big questions are like, what does it take to be an entrepreneur? Is it worth it? Like lifestyle, like is it worth the sacrifice and hard work? And then what should people know before plugging in? So any of those.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just gonna start from like how my background works. I started my entrepreneurship journey in February of 2020.
Mm,
For those
great
people,
timing.
yeah, it was an absolute great timing.
Yeah.
This is me clearly like not knowing exactly how the times were going to be afterwards,
Mm,
but I also knew that like that was my time. to be able to do it and dive into it. Fast forward, I wouldn't say that I necessarily had like the up and up path that people get when they were in 2017, 2018
Mhm,
doing real estate, because that's really when things grew
mhm.
until the entire world was put into a pause.
So it was real estate was the first thing. You went from wealth management to real
To
estate
real
in
estate.
2020
Yes.
February?
That's correct.
Mm.
Um, and so, what do you do in a world that's essentially put at a pause where you can't really do anything, especially like being in California?
Mm,
Well, you look at other shops
mm,
and you learn how to be able to pivot. And that's exactly what I did. I think one of the things that is a very big lesson for me that I had to learn on the spot essentially is fail fast, pivot faster.
mm.
It's the idea that you are, when you're failing at things, it doesn't mean that there's always going to be a lesson innately from there. And when you just gather all that information and get yourself back up to looking into different sources, like that's how you become persistent. And I think that's one of the things that like no one really teaches you until you're actually like
In the
in
trenches.
the trenches.
Mm,
No one teaches you that there's a lot of fails. I mean, everyone could easily quote that, like, every one successful like business, there's like thousands and thousands that are like buried deep that like tragically failed. And that's okay, because in order for someone to be able to get to that point, they needed to try and pivot multiple times.
mm.
And I didn't understand that, or I didn't fully embrace that until I actually got into it, I would say.
Right. So it's like there's a there's a persistence aspect there. There's
Mhm.
like a flexibility of pivoting and whatnot and kind of adjusting
Yep.
um to that aspect. And then yeah, so that's what it takes, or what you're saying. Is it worth it? Like what are the sacrifices you need to make, or like anything else that people need to know before going in?
Yep. So what does it take? Uh it it takes a lot. And I think there's like, we see nowadays on YouTube, or everyone like, trying out new different aspects of things. But that's because of the fact that that wasn't their first like startup. Their successfulness comes from a continuous like persistence, and there's going to be downtimes. If I was to recommend something that I read even prior to going into this journey, was like the whole 80/20 principle,
Mm,
right? Where you realize that like there's a lot of things that when you're an entrepreneur, there's a lot of 80% things that you have to do no matter what, even if it only moves the needle by 20%. But you have to do it, especially if you're starting off, especially if you're bootstrapping, especially if you're just self-funding yourself and not having to raise for it. But then once you deal with that 80% that's needed, you get to that 20% as well. That's going to move everything else on top of that. Not like that's really what it takes. It's not only like fundamentally understanding that that's work, but also mentally understanding that that's how it's going to be able to move the needle when you're
okay.
coming in.
That makes sense. There's a lot of hard work that goes into it, of course,
Mhm.
but just being prepared for that it's very unexpected and there's a lot of twists and turns. And I'm sure it's like industry specific too, but I think the mentality is the thing that's kind of universal, right? That you would say.
Yeah, I think I a lot of people like there's this also like another word for like entrepreneurs, right?
Mm,
And these are the people that are like, oh, they try once and then it didn't end up working, and they're like, all right, like I'm done. I give up. I think when you look at the successful entrepreneurs now, at least the people that you're able to like visually like look up to and see, like we all see like all the glamour that comes with it, but we don't see all the failures that
mm.
that they've built in order to get to that point.
Yeah, just the jets and the Lambos
Just
and
the jets, the
everything,
Lambos, that I mean, because
Rolexes.
that's what everyone wants to see. Everyone wants to see somebody like that's already successful. They don't want to see like all the times that like you failed, because at the end of the day, like that's when you truly realize the actual amount of work that needs to get put in.
Mm,
Um, and that's what I like. That's what I wanted to learn. I think one of the things that one of the questions you also asked was, is it worth it? Is
mm,
it worth my time? I think if you have the same pursuit as someone who wants to be financially free,
mm,
as someone who wants to be able to ultimately control like their own life, it's going to be worth. But there's like there is that innate sacrifice that comes in it, and Frankly, there's times where you could go about it smartly. I know that there's a lot of pitfalls that I had to experience myself that, right now I could clearly advise,
Mm,
like, not to do essentially.
right.
But yeah.
It's a great segue because I was gonna ask like favorite failures. Well, we have some topics of like great stories, right? I was asking you like, do you have
Yes.
any good stories? And we have a few points. So great stories and or favorite failures. So we have a few. So we have Idaho, Mask, and Fall.
Yeah.
Anyone's want to talk about first?
Yeah, we'll start off in Idaho. I mean, again, I think this was peak February 2020. I said, "Hey, I'm going to start my own business." I quit. I'm like, "Thank you so much. I had a great opportunity and I love the company, but I was like, I need to be able to set myself in and really dive into this myself." Fortunately, I was able to find a managing partner with me to co-manage and start my entrepreneurship journey.
Mm.
And next thing you know, the entire world was put into a pause. So then what do we do when California decides like, hey, you can't even travel outside, everyone go inside and everyone go, well, we got to look for other opportunities out there. And so then in the middle, probably just before 4th of July, was me bringing one luggage, one backpack, and making our way and driving all the way to Idaho to set up shop so that we could start doing investments there because things were, like, at least at that point, a little bit more leeway and
Mm.
not stopping. So yeah, that
So
was
Idaho because it was a little bit more lenient in terms of like the real estate.
exactly.
Gotcha.
Or there were still things that were flowing in,
Oh, gotcha.
that was able to go. And yeah, and really like looking up there, the mass company. Well, during this time, things were still on pause. And like yes, there were deal flows that are coming in, but also um again, this is a segue or a recall back from our conversation where sometimes when you put yourself in a position where you are surrounded by people that are also like-minded as you get opportunities essentially fall under your lap.
Hmm.
One of them was this mass company. A My business partner at that time, he had a friend that is a CEO and a founder of a mass company and needed help to be able to start it from a Kickstarter all the way to a full-fledged business where we're printing out 50 masks for the you know per hour,
Mm.
safely and securely in state so that we don't have to worry about um, import export all the way from elsewhere because everything was on a pause.
Right.
And so out of nowhere, there's an opportunity where a mass company falls in my lap. And now I have to pivot from thinking I need to get investments in real estate to, hey, I need to be the sole marketer for how to distribute this mask like for everyone.
Mm.
And rightfully so because of just the dynamic or like the nature of like where things were happening. And so yeah, I didn't close my door. I didn't say, hey, like, nope, this is not for me. But
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I'm ready to take on a new challenge. And, if this thing comes into fruition, this will also like reap the rewards and benefit from it as well.
Mm. So it was at the same. You were still doing the real estate stuff, and then also like helping with this mask
Correct.
company.
Real
Gotcha.
estate never ended on my end. It was
Yeah.
still continuous, but I also knew that deals were very slow in terms of um being able to capitalize on it.
Mm.
And so
So you had like some. It wasn't like your full attention. You had extra bandwidth to do both.
exactly,
Gotcha.
because by the nature of it, you couldn't put your full attention to
Mm.
it.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Time wise. Um. Okay. Did you touch upon fall?
Fall, yeah. I mean,
Fall like spring, summer, or like fall like you tripped?
yeah. Oh, actually, that's true. I think well,
Fun.
winter towards fall time. Actually, winter fall towards winter time is when out of nowhere we we're staying in Idaho, and then fall time comes and we're like, oh, just kidding. We're gonna now break our lease and now drive all the way to Nevada,
Oh.
where we're gonna set up shop here
Mm.
for this mass company. So I was like, okay, and
Who
then
made
just
that
roll with the
decision?
ride.
Was it?
It was a mutual decision because we ended up buying or leasing a huge facility to be able to import a huge like mask company or maker essentially
I see.
to be able to do that.
Okay. So then by Idaho, hello Nevada.
Yeah, by Idaho. It was great seeing you, and then like hello Reno,
Yeah.
where it's a little bit closer to California, but
Yeah.
still,
Do you
yeah.
have a preference between Idaho or Reno?
You know what? North Idaho, I will say,
I've never been, so
Specific.
I've never been to Idaho, so I don't
Okay,
know.
North Idaho, Coeur d'Alene area is beautiful. I
Mm,
think a lot of people. It's one of those like hidden gems that if people know about it, it's
mm,
like it's awesome. If people don't, then it's like their lost type of thing. No one really. It's not glamorous for people to like. It's not for Instagram,
mm,
but it's a place that people would actually like
mm.
and would want to visit for
So
sure.
is it like very like how do you say this? Like wild or is this like suburban city? Or at least the area
It's
you were
very like suburban.
okay,
It feels like like a Irvine, but like cooler because like you get snow there
oh,
because
cooler
it's
like
gonna be in
temperature.
north. Yeah,
Not
yeah.
cooler like oh people like me. Like
Oh,
you're so
yeah,
cool. You live in Idaho.
yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I gotta visit sometime. Is there a so next topic or like not next topic, but so we know what a 9 to 5, 8 to 5 sort of routine is, right? So then
Yes.
like what is the daily routine for an entrepreneur running multiple different companies or have different things going on, irons in the fire? Like what does that look like? Like do you clock in, do you report to yourself? Like
Y-
you
Yeah.
you pay yourself a paycheck and it's like you yell at yourself for being late? Like how does that work?
Yeah, this goes for one of the also lessons that you eventually learn from jumping into entrepreneurship that you don't get to know until you're part of it. Like I used to pride myself in being able to compartmentalize very well. What I mean by that is once I'm off of work, that's great. I could do all of these things and work essentially or like a corporate job became sort of like an anchor in a sense where this is what you're doing for these set hours, which means you get to really place every single schedule that you have around it accordingly so that you could get through all these items. When you're an entrepreneur, you wake up sometimes at 6 a.m. in the morning where you have to put out a fire. You stay up till 1 or 2 a.m. because for a real estate investment, someone is, you know, doing something like with your property that you can't go. And then, your job or your work is like it's on your mind the entire time
Mm,
because it is your business, it is your baby.
mm.
Like I
Can't turn babies off and be like, okay, you just take care of yourself. And
exactly.
I gotta go to the gym.
Yeah, at least not when it's like still small, right?
Mm, mm,
And the thing is that I had a business partner that started his entrepreneurship journey earlier than me.
mm,
So to me, I remember when I ended up partnering with him, I was like trying to be like, "Hey man, we should set up time to like work out at this hour." Like we just straight up start a program and being able to like really compartmentalize a lot of things. And again, slowly but surely, it's like you're like, no, this there's certain things that are on fire that you need to
mm.
prioritize. There's certain things that are not that are always going to mess with your schedule. And you need to be able to understand and roll with the punches.
Right. So you're the boss. Everything kind of falls on you, and there's no clocking out, clocking in. It's like you're responsible for this baby 24/7 or whatever.
Exactly.
Right. That makes sense. Okay. So very encouraging. I think now we all want to be entrepreneurs.
Yeah. I- what I'm saying is
Yeah.
like ultimately what I'm trying to get across is that all of these things is not something that someone should be able to fear, but sometimes it's just a realistic
Mm,
expectation
like be ready
of
for it.
exactly
Yeah.
what it means. That means that a person that's an entrepreneur, like you could clearly look up in any websites, like, oh, what are the abilities that people have? Like, well, one of them is really like time blocking and scheduling
Mm,
that you have to do. And if you're not naturally like that type of person,
it'll be
you
hard.
better make sure that you are or you
Mm.
become one
Or
because
have partner with someone who is, or have an assistant, or if you can.
exactly
Right.
because at that point it like when you are not very good at compartmentalizing of what's considered high priority, mid priority, or like low priority, it's going to eat you up.
Mm,
Like that's what it comes to. And it's again, it's not to scare people, but it's like a true expectation of what it means to be able to grind like that.
that makes sense. Have you heard of those I mean you're an entrepreneur, so maybe, but like there's like the number one, number two of a company, right? They say like that the stereotype the number one person is usually like the visionary, the head in the cloud sort of thing, and then the number two is the more logical, sort of organized person, and that's like a
Yes.
very strong dynamic to have in a lot of these companies out there. I can't come to nothing comes to mind, but like you know what I'm talking about? That sort of archetype of like the one and the two.
Yes.
And sometimes like you have to lean into one or the other, or maybe just your natural strengths. And if you find a good partner, that is a good number two. Or if you're the number two, you find a number one. And so I know you've had multiple ventures. Like, I guess first question is one, do you identify as either like that one or two archetype, and or like how do you navigate that sort of thing? Do you wear both hats? Have you been able to find a number one, number two? Like, so how does that?
Great. Yeah. So my business partner, I would say he's a really big number one.
Mm,
He and from him, I have to learn, and this is one of the things that I learned on the spot, and I think that again people don't prepare you for is like being able to learn how to pivot like faster. Like I can't emphasize that enough. For me, just like you said, as a number two archetype, you're the type of person that like likes organization because to you, process and procedures makes up what the business is. It solidifies it. It gives it like a steady like root to be able to stand on. But sometimes as you're continuously working on that, well, even if the basis is stable, if the idea is not as fruition, like, comes into fruition as most, you need to be able to edit faster or move faster. So I do identify as the number 2,
mm,
but at the same time, there's times where again, like you're in a slump, and I've felt that multiple times as well, where you have to be that person that becomes the number 1, and vice versa. So you have to be able to learn how to do both, but you also it's one of those things where you just have to learn your strengths as well, and know exactly when to or how to be able to do the other.
right, right. I imagine that a lot of people, let's say if they have that desire to be an entrepreneur,
Mhm.
they at least are that there's a part of them that's that one, right? Because they
Yep.
have this creative vision. They have this sort of like, okay, I want to create something in the world. I want to own my own life or create a business, right? And so there is some aspect of that number one. And naturally, the number one is the person you're starting a company of one. And so you are number one naturally, but you also have to do that number two. So then some people might lean towards that. But like if you're a number two type and like I think both of us are kind of like that. Maybe like, you did accounting, wealth management, so you do have this sort of organizational side to you. Obviously, you have the entrepreneurial side as well, like the visionary side. Um, so it's like I don't know how I I guess what I'm trying to say is there are a lot of number twos who have like, okay, I want to do this thing, but also they don't have that sort of like
That one that
that
pushes
one
you.
that's like, yeah, let's just do the things that but those number ones don't necessarily know how to execute and
Mhm.
they're not good with time management or like stereotypes, right? But like they need that number two to help them keep them in line because they're head in the clouds, right?
Yeah.
So I guess like number one is easy. You have an idea, you execute on it, maybe you find help to find the number two. But then if you're a number two type and you want to start a business, like how do you go about that?
Uh, if you are number 2 and you're trying to start a business, that's like again, like I think that's why networking and connections
Mm,
and surrounding yourself into or putting yourself in a position where inevitably you're gonna be surrounded with people like that, like matters a lot.
mhm,
Like I didn't find my number 1 until like later down while I was in private wealth. And at that point, he we didn't work together. He was actually like an old roommate of mine
mm.
back when I just started. And so yeah, it's it's being what would be fun is if, they created a dating app specifically for entrepreneurs
Mm.
where it's like 1 and 2 and you label it from there,
Oh, right, right, okay.
right?
I was just like, wait, don't I would imagine an app like that exists, and they're just entrepreneurs, right? Like,
Just
okay, like
entrepreneurs, not not
entrepreneurs.
not not specifically for dating,
Neither
but
of us
like
have any time, but
yeah.
let's date. Why not?
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
But yeah, I mean,
but those types, okay, let's match. Okay, but you're saying like in a partnership,
in a
not
partnership,
a
not in a
romantic
relationship.
relationship. Oh, darn.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm dating my number two.
yeah.
She's more organizational. Actually, that'd be like good partnerships and marriages are kind of like that sometimes, right? Like they're like not polar opposites, but they're like different.
Yeah,
So it works well in that sense. Usually you have the more organized person always falls in love with the romantic, like head in the clouds sort of person. So maybe it is a good parallel.
exactly. But you can't the only thing is that sometimes people don't know how to compartmentalize between
Yeah,
business and pleasure, so
that's true. Yeah. Because I would imagine it's like you have two number ones and nothing gets done. You just have all these ideas. Two number twos, and you're just like, okay, we are not doing
what are we
anything. What are we
organizing this
organizing? We
thing?
just have spreadsheets and they look great, but what are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah, you're running in circles. And I think again, like at least for me, when like I don't know, let's say it starts off with like finding a hobby,
Mm,
figuring that out. You get to surround yourself with more people, and with more people, you get to understand like, hey, like this is what they're dedicating their time to outside of the things that you guys are in common with.
Mm.
And then from there, when you develop those things and items, like there's people that are going to be willing to listen to like your ideas. Even going to like meetups where people are just pitching like themselves or like how they are. I think those actually work very well because again, there's people that are always going to be willing to listen. And when you have that, that's like, a portion of what makes a company anyways.
Okay. All right. So quick turn pivot.
Okay.
So, in the shoes of, let's say, someone who has an idea and they want to start their own business, small business, or whatever their pursuit may be, right? Like, I guess, what advice would you give them? Like, they have this idea and they want to execute on it. As someone who has taken businesses from in your mind an idea to like actual execution and like making money, like, what advice would you give for someone who just has an like Etsy shop or they want to do this thing or that thing, various fields? Like, how do they start?
Create a game plan.
Mm,
I think a lot of people the reason why number one's, at least in my opinion, it's sometimes it just stays as a number one and it's not executed is because again, like the head in the clouds like idea it doesn't become solidified. When you start having a game plan, you're funneling in like a more solid like plan of being able to execute even to the minute details. A lot of people are saying, let's say, hey, I want to build an app that does this. Okay, well then it's always just going to be like an idea until you say, okay, how much would it cost to hire a software engineer because that's not that's not the type of role that you're trying to do. How much is it going to be able to run like operationally? Who's going to be managing these things down? Once you start like funneling
mm,
everything, and that's when it becomes a bit more concrete, and then that's when you realize, okay, is this worth my time? Is this something that I'm going to pursue? And is this the way that I'm going about it, or do I pivot to something else that I know is much more manageable for me? And like that's when you really get to understand like the opportunity cost of a lot of things.
Okay. So basically, you have an idea, put it down on paper, organize it, write out the details, make it concrete,
Yep.
and see if it's actually feasible to pursue. And at that point, let's say, okay, you figured out all that sort of logistics. Maybe it's a low barrier to entry, and like, okay, it'll cost X amount of money, and this is the steps to do. Um, and then you just do it.
No, that's when again, that's when the self reflection comes
Mm,
of saying, is this the thing that I want to be able to do and pursue?
mm,
Because then at that point, you understand by the time that you're done with that game plan, that's when you truly understand the dedication that it's going to take in order for something to be executed like this. You know what I mean? It's very easy to just be like, "Oh, hey, I'm gonna go buy a 7-Eleven," and you know what I mean? Like the minute you buy that, like first of all, not everyone has that amount of capital, and yes, you could get a loan from it, but like the minute that happens, then what? It's not like you have it there and someone else is managing it for you because it's already pre-built, perfectly fine. Like some people could go through entrepreneurs like that too. That's perfectly fine. But when you're creating something, when you're starting something new, it's a lot of like understanding that there's aside from all of these factors that come from the game plan, the last question that you're gonna have is this gonna work?
mm, mhm,
You know? And again, it's being able to understand that, and when you become honest with yourself, that's when it's like, okay, I am going to like that's when people actually either take a step from it or not,
mm.
right? Or it's just always going to be an idea.
Right. So self-reflection, being honest with yourself,
Yep.
trying to ask yourself if it's going to work. Sometimes you don't know if it's going to work until you try it,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely.
So I guess the next thing, as like a random, like as a person, how do you take it to that? I guess what stops people from taking action on that sort of thing? 'Cause of course, a lot of people probably get to that point where like, okay, I have this plan. I'm a number two person. I think it's all organized. What do you think stops people, and how do you think they should overcome that?
I think it's just their risk tolerance. I think
Mm,
that's the biggest thing that stops people from really pursuing. If they get to the point where they already have a game plan and stuff like that, again, like the idea behind it is like the opportunity cost that you're putting in between whether or not this is going to be worth the time that I'm doing or not. You're right. No, a lot of people don't know whether or not the things that they're currently doing now is going to work or not. At the same time, when you again, by the time that you get to that point, you've already done all the other steps to even get there. Number one is again, surround yourself by the people that are continuously doing that. So the very least you have a good supporting group of people that are pursuing new ideas as well. So now you're put into an environment that you're able to do that. Right. What stops people is like one of them is money, which by the way, I don't think that people should I don't think people should really put that much thought in terms of like the cost of things. And here's the reason why. When like number one, there's a lot of ways to be able to borrow money. And I'm not saying that to put yourself in debt, but at the end of the day, if you're starting a business anyways, regardless of whether or not it's going to work or not, the bet that you're putting is on yourself. And so into that point, it's like it's essentially investing in yourself. There's people that go to college that have to take loans anyways.
Mhm.
And then, like, the realistic part of it is that some people, after they go to college, after they incur this debt, they don't like college does not promise you a job afterwards.
Mhm.
So there's no real security from there, anyways. So if you treat it, I know, shocker, right? But if you treat it the same way, then you're putting that bet on yourself that like saying, hey, I'm going to execute this because I've written out a very good plan. Like money should come like last out of all of these things. And then again, realize that you're going to make it no matter what. It's that persistence.
Okay, that makes sense. Did we touch on favorite failures? I know we had stories, but like I guess more than favorite failures, but like I guess what did you learn from that? 'Cause we heard about like the real estate and then like the market, and then you moved to Nevada and then the mass company. Um, favorite failures and or like what did you learn from those things?
Yeah. I think one thing that I'm still continuously learning, I would say, is how to be able to pivot faster.
Okay,
I think
so you don't think you pivoted fast enough?
no, when you're a number two and when you learn from like number ones
Mm,
that are continuously putting out ideas out there, and what you're trying to do is support them
mm,
and go from that point of view. Usually number twos are the ones that typically take a longer time to
mm.
be able to pivot.
Felt that
Yeah,
saying.
exactly. And so sometimes like you end up where like, hey, like there's this thing and you feel happy about it because you feel attached that something is great and things are working, but guess what? It's might not be the realization that you want. So then you have to pivot somewhere else. And I think that's part of like learning. That's part of digesting what it really means or what really takes to be an entrepreneur. One of my other favorite failures, I would say, is or lessons that I learned is mentally wise. I took a lot of like personal coaching, like growth coaching, myself, and when I initially started entrepreneur, there was a lot of imposter syndrome that I had to deal with. I was like, am I this person? Am I that entrepreneur that I said that I was going to be, or at least that I thought in my head that I was, right? But there's times where you straight up have to be like, "Yes, I am," and the fruits haven't came yet.
Mm,
Yes, I am this, you know, like entrepreneur that has successful jobs that also had failed jobs. But guess what? I'm just starting off. I'm not there yet. But I am that person because I know that I can be that person, and I'm gonna take what it takes to be able to get to that point as a person.
mm.
And when you're setting yourself up like that, I think it carries out, and then it surprises you how much it actually pushes you yourself
Right.
innately.
I like that. So it's kind of like a affirming yourself of who you are, like identifying as that thing, even if you don't have the results, the tangible results now, the outcomes, but you identify as that person, and it kind of propels you towards those actions, habits, mindsets, whatever.
Yes,
Because it's the same with like fitness, right? It's like if you identify as a healthy person who works out and goes to the gym and prioritizes health, naturally, once you take on that identity and that mindset, your actions will follow because then you won't take actions that are not in line with your identity, right? It's like cognitive dissonance. And that's
exactly.
like the first step is like the mind shift of that.
Your mind is like physical health is always going to be important for sure, but your mental health as well. When you have a strong fortitude, when you have a great mindset, and not only that, when you're feeding yourself like a great mindset, I think those like matter a lot
Mhm.
more than everything
Like
else.
what you're consuming
Exactly.
feeds into your mind.
Exactly.
Cool. I want to pivot again. So there's two different topics.
Sure.
We can pick and choose. Okay.
Okay.
So this is not on the list of questions, but dating. We don't have to talk about it. But my question would be,
I
how does an
like
how
long
does
walks on the beach.
yeah, exactly. How does an entre like, so the question is, you don't have to answer it yet, is how does one date, when you have a full-time entrepreneurship job, you know what I mean? Like, it's your whole life, right? I would imagine that's difficult. Um, but the next topic would be like advice for, let's say, high school students, college students that are curious about entrepreneurship. Like, what advice would you give them, and or like how to decide between a typical corporate life and entrepreneurship? I know you talked about like it's be prepared for the mindset, be prepared for the hardships, and there's a mindset that is needed for that, and it's going to be tough. You have to be flexible, pivot, and all that stuff. But then if you're putting yourself in one of their shoes, it's like, oh, how do I decide? Like, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I don't know if it's the right thing. And then like when is it time to quit, if at all, right? Because that's a real question. Um, so yeah, dating or advice to high school college students.
Jeez. Okay, I could technically touch on both because
Sure.
I'm just gonna make it very simple with the first one. The first with dating specifically, unless you find a person that is also as selfless and also very understanding of the types of things that you're trying to do, and you are okay with also the risk tolerance that the other person is able to make for you, that's the only time that it will, in my opinion, will work, especially when you're just starting to date. Because, like, unfortunately, at least for me, like during my time uh, of putting my head down and wanting a business to work, I couldn't think of anything else. And it would, and I know for a fact that at least for me, like dating would suffer on the other side, and I don't want to risk that for the other person. It's not fair, right? So I'm gonna leave it as that. People have made it work, absolutely. People have made it work, and I think the people that have made it work are the ones that are in relationships before and then decided to go into
Mhm.
entrepreneurship.
And then their partner's like kind of on board and they're understanding because they
Exactly.
have that context. But then, as you're saying, like if you're an entrepreneur first and then you're trying to date, it's kind of difficult.
Yes, absolutely. It happens and it's great, but it is very difficult.
Mm.
As far as advice for a younger self, like I'll even put myself in my position. I think for me, it's a matter of if you've had this itch that you feel, because innately, like that's what happens. You have this itch of wanting to be like to do this for yourself. You either like, do you scratch it now or do you scratch it later?
Mm.
And what I mean by that is like it's always going to be there. And the last thing that you want to do is become very established at a later age, and have a lot of more responsibilities that you're thinking of. And then you're like, okay, I want to start my entrepreneur now. Like that, like I would not advise on that. So my biggest advice for that is, if you have this itch now, really think about it. Really start early, because then it's okay. Then it's okay. You have the rest of your time and your lifespan that, first of all, you've learned from everything that you're going to get from your entrepreneurship journey, that you could clearly use to accelerate yourself later on, and put yourself later on in the business world, right? But starting late, um starting at a later time, I would say, poses more challenges, especially if you want to be able to do more things in your life.
Mm. So I imagine that if I'm a high school or college student and I'm like, okay, I have this idea and I do want to start early, but I also my parents want me to go to school, college, and then have a job, and I also want that security because everyone knows that being an entrepreneur is risky and it's way safer to have a 9 to 5, right? So then what would you say to that sort of point? Because
Create a
a lot,
PowerPoint presentation
yeah.
that shows that shows your, I mean, that's what I did. I almost was like, "Dad, look at this."
So like a
Like
presentation
an
to your
actual
parents.
PowerPoint,
Like,
yeah.
this is why I want to be an
This
entrepreneur.
is why I want to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
This is what it's going to take.
Yeah.
I might not learn this, or I might fail at everything, but
Mm,
all of this knowledge that I see right here, boom, very, very resonant to anyone, and I'm going to be a hireable person
mm,
in the late future, because I've learned what it takes. I've learned what it takes to like time manage. I've learned what it takes to be able to be social and connect with people, because that's very important. Like all of these intangible things that you are inevitably going to be doing at a job is all translatable from being an
mm.
entrepreneur.
So you're learning as you go, and you're not losing any time. You're not wasting your time.
No.
So then what about people who like, okay, I'm definitely going to college, but I
Mhm.
don't think I can do both, or maybe they think they have to choose one or the other is like this corporate sort of path, and then maybe I'll do entrepreneurship later because I want to make sure that this is fine. Like, what would you say to that?
I would say that's perfectly fine.
Mm,
I think that it's very acceptable as a person that know, because that's exactly what I did. I knew I had an itch. I didn't know what that itch was until I started deep diving into it. I think for me, my biggest thing that I wanted to make sure was, hey, I wanted to ensure or reassure that to my family that I am capable of being able to take care of myself, because that's ultimately the only thing that they ask for.
mhm.
And so when you're able to do that and then realize like, hey, like now it's time to be able to do myself a favor and pursue this. Like that's also like acceptable as well.
Mm,
And that's okay, because that's exactly what I did.
right. So like, it's fine to go to the traditional path and make your parents proud and or show that you can support yourself.
Yep.
But if you have the itch, definitely scratch it. Ideally sooner than later.
Yep.
And you could do both too, right?
You could do both. I mean, that's exactly what I'm doing now. Like I
Like starting a company while you're in school or have a job or whatever like that or some sort of endeavor.
exactly. I
Mm,
mean, if there's people right now that could land jobs and never went to school, like
mm.
you could do both. There's really like no exception. Like the internet and everything else has
There's no
done so well.
excuses.
There's
Yeah.
no excuses.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so I guess last question on this topic is if you could redo it all over again from our first year UCI or your first year UCI, whatever, not same grade, but if you were first year UCI, Ronnie,
Okay.
what would you redo or how would you do that differently?
If I was a first
Like you're undeclared major, whatever, and you're just fresh, like you can go any direction. You just got on campus. What would you do
I
differently?
would I would dedicate a time at least once a week, which is, a lot of people think, oh, that's not a lot like now, but back in college when everything is just sporadic
Mm,
and stuff like that, like everything goes. But I would dedicate at least once a week and really call it like internal self-reflection
mm,
to myself.
I love that.
And when you dedicate like just one day, like even if it's an hour of saying, what do I really want to do in my life? Which is a big question, and you're not supposed to answer it within the first hour of the first
You're
week.
saying you can't answer that as an 18-year-old?
No, you can't.
I was
But
joking.
but the yeah, but the best part about it is like in asking that question, it gives you the opportunity to ask even more questions from it. And that's when you get to really understand yourself. Like I loved my college time because of the fact that like I was out there and put it and going out there, but the minute that I got out of college, I knew that I needed to work on myself a lot more. And I could have avoided that essentially if I gave myself that leeway of saying, what is it that I'm actually doing for me?
Mm.
And then it goes from there.
Yeah, definitely. I have the same piece of advice for when I talk to college students, like they don't know what they're doing or they're trying to figure themselves out. I'm like, the most important thing you can do in this time is to figure out yourself, figure out what you're all about, how you take strengths, what inspires you, what energizes you, because that's a lifelong process. But as you do that, like you said, 1 hour self discovery or whatnot, then it calibrates your compass so you know which way you're supposed to be going because now you know yourself better. Whereas if you're trying to just go in this direction because society or your parents told you, it could be the wrong way because you didn't take the time to understand yourself and figure out who you are as a person. Because you don't want to be going like spending 40 years climbing up this ladder and you realize it's the wrong building you were going up because you didn't take the time to calibrate your compass, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's very interesting about that, right? Like in terms of how kids grow, you have an age of one and what they consider now is like either like 18 to really fully physically
Mm,
develop yourself, right? Like that's exactly what it is. But it takes a longer time afterwards to mentally like develop
right.
yourself.
Right.
And when you become more self-aware of a lot of things, like it does what you consider is a weakness is could actually be a strong suit. Knowing that you are weak at something is a pro. Like as much as people don't understand that. Like if you know that you're the type of person that can't sit on a chair for like 18 hours in a day, like certain paths are not for you, and that's okay, because the more comfortable you are with the type of things that you want to be able to pursue, the happier you're going to be and the more successful that you're going to feel.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. It's like that Tony Robbins quote. It's like success without fulfillment is failure,
Yes.
right? Because it's like, yeah, you can succeed in whatever metric society gives you, but if you're not fulfilled, if you're not doing the things you're meant to be doing and that you were built and designed to do, then what's the point?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Anything else on that topic?
Uh
If you feel like we missed?
oh, for 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 what I would do
Oh,
differently,
differently. Yeah, yeah.
uh I would I explore more
Like in what way?
in
Like
all
explore to
aspects
refine?
of in all aspects of activities
No.
that college has to offer. I think I think I did very well on my freshman year of dabbling into a lot of things. But as you get, to your sophomore year, to your junior year, senior year, where you feel like you need to establish like a lot more, like have a specific identity for a lot of things, like what you end up missing is the curiosity of finding out other things that inspire you. So like for me, like dance, if it wasn't for dance, I would obviously wouldn't have met you. At the same time, if I did dance for only a certain amount of time and then like not to the rest, right? Like would have been more opportunities for me to give leeway to new ideas or even like connect people in the same field as me.
Like some more exposure to more things,
Yep.
more opportunities to find those things that might like pique your interest.
Yes. College is about as much as it is for your general education. It's really just finding about yourself.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. I 100% agree. Cool. So we can go into rapid fire questions. You
Sure.
ready? I mean, they don't have to be. The questions are rapid fire, but the answers could, be however long.
Yep.
So this is the Billboard question. I took this from one of my favorite podcasts, Tim
Mhm.
Ferriss show. Want to be on his podcast one day. Maybe maybe I can ask him on mine. But if you could put up a sign for millions of people to see, what would it say? So the spirit of the question is like, what is a message that you want people to hear or see and like kind of take in?
uh Like, if I was to put, like, a quote
Yeah.
essentially for, like, for myself or, like, about me or for
It's a message that, like, the world will see.
the world will see.
Yeah.
It is okay to fail.
Why
That
is
would be my message.
because you feel like people think it's not okay to fail?
Because I think that that's what scares a lot of people
Mm,
like, going back to what you said, like, "Oh, what scares people from pursuing, like, their dreams?"
mm,
It's like, sometimes it's just, like, the idea that, like, their dreams could actually fail.
right.
But when you're okay with that, like, you get to grow and learn and know yourself even more, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
That's the point, right?
Mhm.
So I know we kinda talked about this, like, what if you could redo your first year, but I guess generally, like, do you have a biggest regret or something that you would do differently?
My biggest regret, uh, okay, I have one, but this comes back to I think it's so one of the things that, and this could be like a completely like different, like deeper thing, but I always put myself in a position, and I think this is something that I'm learning, right, where I pursued or my pursuit in terms of success, in terms of entrepreneurship, has also caused me the opportunity to also find like a meaningful in a sense of like a romantic like relationship
Mm,
because again like that was the case. So I don't know, I think maybe at the years that I'm currently at right now, sometimes it makes you self-reflect about like, hey, would I have been this successful or would I have been to this point now had I pursued something like that, you know what I mean, like beforehand, or what do you call this, or would I actually have been further from where I am now because I went to go by myself, right?
mm,
And no regrets whatsoever, type of thing. But it's just a matter of like if you are able to understand that and like as a food for thought type of thing.
something to think about or just reflection.
Yeah,
What
like
if?
then you get to like when they say two heads are better than one. Like
Mm,
what if you're the person that your partner, your future partner, is that also that person that also helps you like that too, like
yeah.
dating your one and two.
Right, exactly. We did talk about advice so far, but is there a piece of advice you would give your younger self now, and what would it be? Any age range, maybe like 10-year-old Ronnie or high
Invest
school.
in no, I just
There you go. That was the one.
no. I think my again, I think it goes back to like what would I have done differently. It's again like make sure that the amount of like that you put time for yourself.
Mm,
Make sure that you've put time to like really dig deep inside and understand yourself. Because when that happens, I think the more self-aware you are, like sometimes the more cynical you become. But I honestly think and I honestly believe that the more self-aware you are, the more your path becomes a bit more understand. Like there's the path that's made for you because like shows up faster.
mm,
Mhm.
definitely. Okay. Are there any like habits or routines that you feel like really help you in your life right now that you're like you would never give up and you would advise other people or like suggest like, hey, this really helps me.
Yes. The thing that I would advise is find your three: one that makes you money, one that keeps you healthy, and one that keeps you sane.
Like activities.
Like yeah, like those three things.
Mm,
It's yeah, three activities and or careers or whatever.
mm,
But it's one that you're able to be able to live, one that's gonna keep you healthy because your body is your temple essentially, and you want to be able to protect it. Then one that's gonna mentally keep you sane so that you could focus on all the things that you're gonna want to
mm.
do anyways.
I like that.
Mhm.
Um, so who would you call successful and or how do you define success? Like are any people in your life, in the world that you're like, that person's successful, and then here's how I define success.
Oh man. Um mm, I can't think of anything at the moment, but I'll definitely get back to you
It's
on.
like no one's successful in this world. It just
I I think it's definitely it's a question I haven't like dug deep into it because everyone could easily say like you know what I mean, like the Jeff Bezos in the world is
right,
like
right,
successful, but like is it really successful? Is he really successful when he goes on a divorce like afterwards and
right.
is now like in his life? Like I don't define that as success,
So how do
right?
you define success?
I define as success as similarly to like that Tony Robbins quote that you said. It's like being fulfilled like with all the things that you're gonna want. It's to be able to the my success, my personal success journey is like what like me being flexible, me being able to do what I want financially free, and me being able to do what I love with the people that I love.
Mm, I
That's
like that.
that's what I consider success.
Cool. Last few. So if time and money weren't an obstacle, what would you be doing now?
100% traveling.
Traveling where?
Yes. I will well, for one, if that wasn't an issue, I would actually still I have not gone to Europe yet, so I would be traveling
Mm,
all over Europe. I would actually try to hit up every single like country that I have not been in.
mm.
And I think one of my big pastimes that I do is like people watch.
Mm. Not
Because
creepy at all.
yeah, no,
Let me watch
it's
you.
because like when you travel, you visit another place that you're unfamiliar with, and you're culturally just absorbing it like a sponge.
Being exposed to different
And be
cultures.
yeah, I think it widens up your horizon even more, and it breaks down a lot of the things that you consider like you've built so much as concrete,
Mm.
and you realize like maybe like that's not
It's
necessarily
not
the
the way
way of
that's done
life.
everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you have that like malleability, like the more you get to be like able to accept a lot more things too.
Yeah. Definitely. How do you spend most of your time? I know you're an entrepreneur and that's a full-time thing. Anything else besides, working on your businesses?
Worrying about it is
Worrying
one thing.
working on business, worrying about my business.
Yeah,
It's a
no.
full-time gig.
I think I found my one thing that keeps me healthy is obviously going to the gym.
Mm,
One thing that keeps me like every now and then, you know, board game night with friends is actually fun to keep me a bit distracted.
mm.
And also like I know we use ChatGPT to write it down, but yes, like I am a food enthusiast, but only if people are willing to try new things and they invite me because I don't have time to think about it
Yeah, you're like,
because
I
I'm
can't
thinking about my
take
business.
initiative on this stuff, but invite me out.
Yeah.
So this is an open invite. If you want to try new foods, Ronnie is down to go.
Yes. Please. Absolutely.
And so you can deadlift 750
No, 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 no.
dry.
That's I can try,
Oh,
but
okay.
it might break my back on that
Eventually.
one. Yes.
Okay, so do you have any favorite movies, books, videos, articles that you share or recommend the most?
The two books that I would highly recommend, especially if people are pursuing, again, entrepreneurship, life, or journey, there's two big key things that I think will help you a lot. Number one is, again, the 80/20 principle. And when you define 80/20 principle, not only from like an operation perspective, but a mental perspective,
Mm,
that's what's going to prepare you. The second one is Atomic Habits.
Mm,
I think being able to fundamentally like define certain anchors as a habit for you to keep you sane to progress, even if it's a 1% per day progression, is going to help you in the long run in terms of how persistent you're going to be, because you're innately going to develop that persistency from that as
yeah,
well.
definitely.
Mhm.
James Clear, right? Yeah,
Yes.
such a good book. Probably one of the most like referred self improvement sort of books, but it's really good on habits and like how it's actionable too.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I guess this is a selfish plug for myself. Yonocruz.com. I do book summaries. It's like definitely one of my top books. But
That's exactly how I found that book.
oh yeah, oh really?
I I saw one of your posts about it. I read the synopsis, and then I was at an airplane
Mm,
like place, souvenir place, and I was like, "What's a good book to read?" And I got the book.
nice. See,
Yeah.
changing lives. Yeah, subscribe to my my blog. I do book summaries. It's just for myself. It's kind of like this, right? It's like I like reading, I like learning, and then I like to be able to teach to other people.
Yes.
Because that's what this is for. Okay, so that's all the main questions. These are the ending ones. So like, I like to end with gratitude. This is something I got from my mom. So what are you most grateful for, Ronnie?
What am I most grateful for?
Yeah.
I think I'm most grateful for my friends and family. Um, they are the reasons. They're part of the pillars and one of the reasons as to why I am where I am today. And without them, without their support, and I think that I would be in a much rockier place.
Definitely. Yeah. Support systems, everything.
Hmm.
Final ask for the audience.
Yeah.
Any like asks, suggestions, or
Yeah, I think all I ask for the audience, it may have seemed like my conversations is coming from a very like risky thing, but that's also because of the fact that like there's like, if you want to find someone that's looking for if for like affirmation of like entrepreneur is like this shiny glamorous thing, you're gonna find that like very everywhere else. Like I'm here to be able to expose like, hey, there's rough patches, and that's okay. That's quite literally part of it. And so if you think that it's not to scare anyone, it's to hopefully be able to encourage someone that like even for me that I would consider myself like good with the business that I have now also ran into failures, and that's okay. It's being able to like just have like that humbling experience that again it's okay to fail.
mm, it's okay to fail. I like that. So yeah, where can people find you, Ronnie? Social media handles, websites, anything?
Yeah, I just have my personal Instagram, which is at I Ronnie 49. If anyone wants, if there's people in terms of like the community that wants to be able to ask for advice, like I'm obviously open to getting messages from there or even through like LinkedIn as well. Um, you know, I'm an open book. I would like to say, especially like when you just meet someone, yeah, I'm more than happy to be able to not only go through my journey, but also ask for like very specific tips and tricks
Nice.
uh with my businesses.
Nice, cool. So yeah, we'll have links to everything we talked about, Ronnie's socials, where you can find him in the show notes. So yeah, thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate it. It was a fun conversation. I know we can go on for hours, obviously, so we'll definitely have parts 2 and 3 and whatnot. So yeah, I just want to say thank you. And so I will read my outro script now. Maybe we'll have this recorded later on. But so thank you guys for thank you to my audience for tuning in and listening. Hope you guys learned as much as I have from this conversation. Friendly reminder to be kind to yourself and to others, especially yourself. And hopefully, you can learn that, with some humility. There's always something that you can learn from someone else, aka gurus around you, if you just take the time to listen. So, until next time, thank you so much for being here.